it seemed like a good idea at the time, I think, would be the best way of putting it. My undergraduate degree was in geography, and I did my dissertation in tourist behaviour, and then went, oh well, I'll do my PhD in tourist behaviour. And then I found leisure studies, and leisure studies was lovely. You know, it had all those theories and concepts and sociological things that tourism just doesn't have. I think two things would be my obsessions. So I'm a rower, have been a rower for 33 years now. So I row still and I coach. So getting up early and going onto the water when it's freezing cold and dark, I do for fun. And other than that, it's spending time walking my dog, throwing a ball for her because I am her tool to command. And that would be my leisure, other than collapsing at the end of the day on a couch and trying not to go to sleep. You could go from the first time I was drunk to the first time I had a hangover, the first time I went on a date, or the first time I took part in the stupidest rowing event there is, which is a 31-mile race. I can certainly remember that. It hurt. And I was seriously into serious leisure enough that I went back and did it another 4 times. So, yeah, I think that one would probably be the one that's had the most impression on me, because rowing is in my soul. My long-suffering wife will tell you that quite happily, because if I haven't been out on the water for a week, she'll send me to the water. Because I'm grouchy, horrible, so no, and everything else. So there you go, that's what happens when you become a serious leisure person. You become an addict who needs to have whatever it is regularly. Which is, as an aside, is probably one of the worst things about being a leisure academic. You can never escape it. I'll answer conceptually and physically. So, conceptually, I would say, here around the world, there's been more commercialization of leisure. And as a process of it, people forgetting what leisure can be, which is about freedom to be who you want to be and to explore who you want to be. And instead, conforming to whatever the commercial aspects are. So there's that, and I think that's sad. You see it everything from children playing to adults engaging in whatever leisure they are, and it's a lot more commercial controlled, not free. So there's that. I think on the physical side, it's just getting busier. Even in a place like Dunedin, which is a really quiet, small place on the scale of the world, is busier than it was 10 years ago. Busier in all leisure environments, everything from the pub to the hikes to the ski slopes to the rivers. Just more people, which on the one hand is great. It means people are engaging in all these leisures. On the other hand is a problem, because capacity is a problem. Well, apart from the obsession with rugby, which will rugby is a religion in New Zealand, absolutely. Whether you play it or you just watch it, it's a religion. When the All Blacks play the national team, then New Zealand stops. So that's very unique to New Zealand. Other than that, I would say that despite the commercialization that goes on, there's still a, particularly outdoor recreation, there's a lot of desire amongst New Zealanders for that freedom to express themselves. So whether it's creating the next craze after bungee jumping, or getting out and hiking the hills, or surfing off the coast, there's still a large component desiring that freedom, even at the same time it's being commercialized away. I think that'll do. I've talked this with people over the years who have said, oh, leisure studies is dying as an academic discipline. We're seeing programs around the world dying, tourism's coming in, events is coming in, and this is all bad, bad, bad. And then I sit and reflect and I go, well, actually, as the editor of Annals of Leisure Research, or as somebody who knows various of the book publishers, it's vibrant what's happening. Leisure studies is so alive. There might not be many people left in a leisure studies department looking at leisure, but there are so many people looking at leisure, and it's so beautiful when I see it. Your sociologists, your anthropologists, your health science people, your sports people, all coming in from different angles, but all talking the language of leisure studies, and all borrowing from the conceptual foundations that leisure studies have. And I think that's beautiful. So I actually see the future of leisure studies being really positive and rosy. There's so many emerging academics doing their PhDs and postdoctorals, early careers, and they're all taking leisure studies in new directions, and I'm really happy with that side. I think what it's beholden on us next to do as people working in tertiary education and leisure studies is to make sure that that vibrancy, richness and life is transferred down towards the undergraduates. Not necessarily in a leisure studies program, if that doesn't fit, but into all of those multidisciplinary programs, so that leisure studies is and always has been a multidisciplinary meeting ground. It's its strength, but it's also its potential weakness, that it can get lost everywhere else. So the biggest challenge, if you like, is to make sure that we bring it into these undergraduate and master's programs and make it relevant to them, and that they see it and they engage with it, and they don't just go, oh, it's leisure, and that we see the richness and the value. Mm-hmm. So I think the outlook is positive. I'm an optimist.
Great.
I think it's the easiest one to say, and it's the hardest one to actually train. It's that ability to think. We can call it to be entrepreneurial, if we like, to think outside the box, to see problems coming before they actually hit, and to be able to come up with solutions. We live in such a dynamic world. From one day to the next, things are always changing, everything's always changing. So just as in other areas, people who are going to go out and work in the leisure industry or the leisure environment have to be able to really think on their feet. Yes, we need all those practical skills of outdoor recreation, sports management, etc., etc. They are vital as well, but to be the leaders of the leisure phenomenon, we need the critical thinkers, the entrepreneurs, to take it forward. I've got more faith now that we're heading in the right direction than had you asked the question 5 years ago, when all of the programs that had been set up over the last 20 years were dying. The reason why I've got more faith now is because I think, strangely enough, leisure studies is gaining a new identity for itself that's a healthier identity. there was a component of leisure studies that had become too insular for my taste. That was sociology of leisure. And the sociology of leisure stuff is really interesting, but it's only one component of what leisure is about, and one component of what understanding leisure is about. So now, to go back to my earlier point, that we have all of these new people coming into the field from all of these different directions, they give it the vibrancy and the health. And from that can come this willingness to engage in a way that benefits society, individuals, the leisure industry, and everything. So I feel there's that positive momentum there. The challenge, and one thing that World Leisure can engage with, is how do you harness that? Because at the moment it's very wild and free. It needs direction. You know, if we take tourism, one of our neighbouring disciplines, there's a very clear direction that they want to go in. They've worked it out. They've got their structure. They've got strong organisations behind them, and it's all there. We have those things. We just need to put them on a testosterone boost and build them up. But I think the willingness is there, and so the energy's there, the willingness is there, and as long as those two things are there, I think that getting the whole thing set up so that our graduates can go out and be proud to be graduates of leisure, or graduates who have a knowledge of leisure, brilliant. Why shouldn't they be? You know, we have graduates nowadays in tourism and events who are proud to be that. And to be honest, the tourism and events industries are tiny compared to the leisure industry. So, come on, let's do it. Over to you guys at World Leisure to do that. The thing is in the title, isn't it? World Leisure. Emphasis on the first one. That here is a global umbrella organisation that truly can, through its position, help to take the regional bodies and get us all working in a direction. What do I mean by that? Get us working in a direction where we see what the society and what the industry want in terms of graduates, and not necessarily giving them exactly what they want, because sometimes it's like going to the doctor, you don't know what you actually want until afterwards, but certainly listening to them and applying it and thinking and setting up, you know, each program at a university has to be individual, but setting up a overarching viewpoint, if you like, an ethos that, you know, no matter where they come from in the world, leisure graduates or graduates with leisure in their background are going to have these kind of skills, and this is the way to try and get them to that point. So I think that's very much from the teaching point of view, and you leave the nuts and bolts and the specifics to the individual programs, but they all buy into this, and they buy into it at the university level, the regional level, then the world level. But then it's also about what can World Leisure do to bring together the researchers and the teachers in the field, and to get them all thinking together, seeing each other, creating a community on which we can all lean, because there's more strength in unity than there is in this diversity, or individuality, sorry. So that's another thing. And then the third thing is to reach out to industry, like leisure studies, and I'm talking generally, not just World Leisure, but leisure studies is never done before, to actually bite the bullet and recognize the reality that there is such a thing as a leisure industry, and it's an important industry, and it's one that has huge ramifications for individual and social well-being, and bring them into us and extend us to them. So we begin to understand each other, recognizing that our research has to be of value beyond the walls of a university, and our graduates have to be able to go out and find jobs in this industry. So we have to talk to them, and I think those are three very big jobs. But I think World Leisure is in a position now to be the umbrella organization to help, not necessarily lead, but to make this happen, because it's got to happen. I think part of what we've been doing in these last few days is reaching out to each other. Email, Skype, it's all right. Physical. I think you have to get people together. You have to get people together and give them time to actually decide, well, we're working in the same area, but do we actually like each other? And sure, not everybody will like each other. They'll go off into groups, but they can do it within the umbrella. It takes time for sure, and you have to keep trying and trying. But the more you're out there, the more you're saying, hey, World Leisure is here, we're alive, we're vibrant, we're putting on the congresses, we're doing the workshops, we're doing the hard yards. The people who want to gravitate and the organizations who want to gravitate will gravitate. I've seen the value of putting on a good conference, that it's not just, put it on and people will turn up. It's about how you deal with all the social aspects of it, and how you make it for the academics, by the academics, and make it relevant to the wider industry. So it's not all just a bunch of navel gazing. It's got appeal. And if you do that, then yeah, people come. The trick then is that you've got to keep doing it. You've always got to be there. We look at the, if you like, established world societies, or the royal societies sort of thing, who've been around for 100 or more years. They have natural gravitas. But they only have that natural gravitas because they worked hard to create it. So now World Leisure has to work hard to create it. And then you're like, well, World Leisure, that's an amorphous thing. There's people behind it. There's a small group whose job it will be for that, but then there's got to be a big group who are willing to volunteer their time. And I think they're the key ones, really. How do you get them? You make sure that they're happy and they're feeling that they're getting out what they're putting in. And if you can do that, then you have a community that's a global one, and it will start to run off itself. The professors will drag the lecturers to the conferences, and the lecturers will drag the PhD students, and the PhD students will tell the undergraduates that they're doing the tutorials with about it, and then it builds. But what are you looking at? A 20-year program, probably. But everything starts with small steps. I would reinforce that to anybody who's out there thinking that leisure studies is dead, or it's a dying area, or whatever. Quite simply, you're wrong. It is vibrant, it's alive, and it's got so much to offer. We can trace the concepts of leisure all the way back to the ancient Greeks. There is such a rich conceptual foundation there. I know I introduced leisure studies to one of my tourism PhD students once, and he's like, wow, I didn't know there was this kind of conceptual foundation I could hang on, rather than, looking at, and I love tourism studies, it's nice and everything else, but it doesn't have that rich conceptual foundation, you know, that academic foundation you want to throw in. And he's like, I like this. And he's like, well, that's my job done. There's one convert. So now all we have to do is convert the other few billion people on the planet. But everybody engages in leisure. There's not one person on this planet goes through their life not having 1 minute of leisure. Then it's relevant to everybody. To not research that, to not engage with it, would almost be a crime.